Hello and welcome to Retail Management BUS302. This is week 3. We are talking about retail strategy and the consumer, and this is lecture video number 3. In our first two lecture videos this week, we talked about the consumer buying process. That's the process that consumers are going to go through, and once they realize, hey, I have this unmet need, they're going to evaluate their alternative products. They're going to gather information about products that are available, evaluate those products, make a decision, and then go through this post-purchase decision process. Now, we also talked in lecture 2 about the different types of decision situations that consumers go through. And then also we looked at some of the ways that we as retailers can target our consumers using various strategies by building various target markets. Now, you may be thinking, wow, this is a lot of work for a retailer to go through. Why in the world would they do this? Well, it all comes down to a retailer really wants to develop a strategy that will help them long term create a sustainable competitive advantage. You might be thinking, what in the world is this strategy you're talking about? Well, a strategy really is a statement that says, hey, this is who we want to target. These are the resources that we have available. And this is the way that we are going to behave so that we can be more competitive over the long term, and constantly be competitive. That's that idea of sustainable competitive advantage. So if you create a retail strategy, we need to understand our target market. That's the target segment that we want to focus our resources on and make sure that we have the right products for them. And that also affects our format, which is basically, are we going to be online? Are we going to have, that's the retail channel that we talked about in week 2. So when we talk about a retail strategy, right, all the things that we've talked about so far have led us to this point where, yeah, it's a lot of work, but we need to do that work so that we can develop this strategy. Now, the reason that we develop this strategy, we want this sustainable competitive advantage. This is what's going to help us operate more efficiently, do better than our competition, right? In order for our competitive advantage to be sustainable, it cannot be, you can't copy it easily. It's got to be unique, right? So as we start thinking about that, we're going to go through this strategic retail planning process. So to develop our retail strategy, we have to go through this process to develop the strategy and the plan, right? So that whole process means selecting our target market, retail format, and building the competitive advantage. That's the process. What does that process look like? Well, it starts off with defining the mission, conducting a SWOT. Now, SWOT internally are strengths and weaknesses. Those are the things that we do really well or don't do well. We also have to look at our opportunities and threats. Those are external. Those are the things that we have no control over. So we look at our external environment. We identify our opportunities. We evaluate those opportunities. We allocate resources, develop our retail mix, and then evaluate our performance. It's a 7-step process that we go through. And we'll be talking about this process throughout not just the rest of this lecture video, this video and lecture 4, but throughout the rest of the course. So step 1, let's define the business mission. So the mission statement really tells us what business we're in, what should our business be in the future, who are our customers, what are our capabilities, what do we want to accomplish. Our mission statement is who we are. It is a very specific statement. When I teach leadership courses, I spend a lot of time on this. I will not do that here. I'm sure you've heard about mission statements in other classes as well. So I would refer you to those notes. But the mission statement is the key to everything we do in the retail strategic planning process, right? So we always go back to this. The strategic plan will always support the mission statement. The second thing that we do, again, we conduct a SWOT analysis. Now, the SWOT analysis is both internal and external. Internally, that is our strengths and weaknesses. These are the things that we're really good at. And this is also the hardest part of the process because it's hard at times for us to really be able to be objective and non-biased when trying to say this is our strength or our weakness. It can be really very difficult for us to do that. And so I think this is where many retail leaders and leaders in general have problems. Now, whenever you're conducting a SWOT analysis, part of the internal environment is your financial performance. So you will want to evaluate your financial performance using financial ratios and other things while benchmarking your performance to your competitors. You're also going to want to look at external environment. Now, the external environment are the opportunities and threats. Now, an opportunity is an opportunity regardless of whether you take advantage. A threat is a threat regardless of what you do. They just are. These can be market factors or competitive factors. They can be environmental dynamics, bargaining power of vendors, all sorts of different things, right? So when we start talking about the external environment, these are not things like, oh, well, if we do this, this is an opportunity, and we put it on our SWOT. No, an opportunity is always an opportunity, regardless of what we do, and a threat is always a threat, regardless of what we do. So it's important to realize those things. So part of this, some things that you would want to consider in this: management capability, your financial resources, the operations, your merchandising capabilities, store management, locations, and the loyalty of customers. All of these items would be part of the SWOT analysis. Now, that first slide was internal. External, you're going to want to look at your market size, your barriers to entry, some of the technology things, regulatory changes, cyclical cycles. All of these areas would be part of your opportunities and threats that you would want to consider. Once you go through and you've got your SWOT done, you will then identify your strategic opportunities. So the SWOT is not an opportunity for you to say, hey, we should do this. No, the SWOT is your listing things. Step 3, you'll say, based on my SWOT, we should do this. We should do this particular thing. So you have to do the SWOT and be honest and unbiased to develop your strategic opportunities. Now, you should have probably 2 or 3. Maybe you'd say, hey, we want to open a new location, or we want to create, do more product depth, something like that. Once you have a few opportunities, you would then evaluate those. Now, when you evaluate those, that's where you're going to say, hey, based on what we're doing, this one is strong here, this is strong here. And if we do these will help us develop our competitive advantage, or these things are part of our strengths, and therefore it will help us develop the competitive advantage long term. So 3 and 4, this is where you list them. 4 is where you evaluate them. 5 is where you choose them and say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this. We're going to assign a time frame to it, and we are going to allocate resources. We're going to put money towards this because developing a strategy generally costs money. So you're going to put the money towards that. Finally, you're going to hit the last 2. You'll develop your retail mix. You'll say, okay, based on our strategy, what we've decided to do, now we're going to change our mix. This could be adding a new location. It could be a new communication plan, or whatever that might be. You're going to, so basically you're implementing your strategy. And then number 7, you're going to say, you know what, how are we doing? So maybe a month later, you're going to look and say, we made these changes. How are things going? Oh man, it didn't quite work. You'll make adjustments. So that's step 7. So as you go through this 7-step process, you're constantly going to be monitoring and then making your adjustments as you move forward to make sure you're going to attain your, make sure that you're going to get to your strategic goal, that mission that we talk about, right? So in the real world, okay, right, now we say, okay, how does this work in the real world? Right? There's lots of things. This isn't like, oh, we're in step 1 or 2. A lot of times what you're doing is it's very interactive. So as you're going through the SWOT, you may say, oh, maybe we need to tweak our mission statement, or maybe we need to do this, or maybe we need to do that. So this can be a really messy process, and it could go through several iterations. and it could, it will change your company long as you go through, into the future, long term. So it's not a one and done thing. It's not like, hey, we did it, check the box, and now we can move on. No, this is something that is going to be constantly ongoing and constantly being changed and developed. So that's how this works in the real world. And with that, we're at the end of lecture video number 3, and we'll come back in lecture video number 4, which is our final lecture video for this week.